What if a simple act of kindness at an airport led to a job, a movement, and a love story that would change thousands of lives forever? Amara Bennett didn't believe in fate. She believed in calendars. Resumes. Scheduled interviews and well-rehearsed answers. And this morning, she was doing everything right. Wearing her best blazer, power walking through Terminal B of Austin Bergstrom Airport, boarding pass in one hand, phone in the other, scrolling through last-minute prep tips for an interview that could finally lift her out of her mid-level PR job. She was headed to Chicago, a potential new life, a bigger paycheck, a better title, and maybe just maybe a little respect. Then she heard it. "Please, can you help me?" The voice wasn't loud, but it stopped her mid-step like a rope around the ankles. Amara turned. Near a vending machine stood a young black man, maybe in his late 20s. He was hunched over, gripping the side of the machine like it was the only thing keeping him upright. His right ankle was twisted at an odd angle. Sweat clung to his forehead, despite the terminal's icy air conditioning. "Sorry," he said, breath short but composed. "I think I sprained it." "Can you help me stand?" Amara's instincts clashed hard with her upbringing. Her mother had raised her on the doctrine of self-reliance. Don't get distracted. Don't get delayed. Keep moving. And her gateser was boarding. Final call. But her feet didn't move. She tucked her phone into her bag and stepped forward. "Okay," she said softly. "Let's get you up." "Don't move too fast." She crouched beside him, slid an arm under his shoulder, and helped him rise. His build was lean, athletic, not bulky, but strong. Still, he clearly winced with every step. His jeans were dusty. His black t-shirt had no logo, no flair. He looked like someone who belonged everywhere and nowhere at once. "Where's your gate?" she asked. "C14, he said, trying to shift weight onto the bad foot. That was across the terminal. So was hers. But in the opposite direction. Amara hesitated. Her brain calculated the loss. Help him, and she'd miss her shot. Walk away, and she'd regret it for the rest of her life. She looked around. Dozens of people passed them by. No one slowed down. No one even looked twice. "No one's helping you?" she asked. He offered a faint, ironic smile. "I guess I'm invisible today." And that was it. Decision made. "Let's go," she said. They moved slowly through the terminal, Amara bearing most of his weight. Travelers zipped past them with earbuds in, latte cups in hand, and absolutely no interest in the quiet struggle unfolding near gate signs. "What's your name?" she asked, adjusting her grip. "Julian," he said. "And you?" "Amara." "Amara Bennett. I owe you one. Just buy me coffee when we're both in the sky." He laughed. "Deal." At gate C14, the airline employee barely looked up as Julian showed his ID. Then, surprisingly, she nodded and gestured toward a private corridor. "Executive first, VIP ramps to the left." Amara blinked. "Executive first." Julian caught her look. "Long story," he said, smiling gently. "I'm good from here." She stepped back. He gave her a small nod and disappeared down the hallway. She turned to run, heart racing, heels clacking against tile floors, breath catching in her throat. But it was too late. Gate 6A was empty. The screen read, "Departed." Amara stood frozen, staring at it like it might change its mind. She sat down on the nearest bench, her chest tight, her shoulders sore from carrying someone else's weight, literally and figuratively. Her phone buzzed, an email from the recruiter. "We're sorry you missed your flight. The interview slot has been filled. No rescheduling is available." And just like that, it was gone. Gone because she helped a stranger, because she chose kindness over convenience, because she did something her own mother might have called foolish. She whispered to herself, "Brilliant, Amara. Just brilliant." And yet, deep in her chest, below the disappointment, below the ache, something flickered. Pride. Because even if she had nothing to show for it, no job, no interview, no new title, she had done what almost no one else had. She stopped. She saw someone who needed help, and she chose to act. What she didn't know, what she couldn't have known, was that Julian Westwood, the man she helped, wasn't just any traveler with a twisted ankle. He was the CEO of West Air Global, one of the fastest-growing private airlines in the world. And in that moment, walking down the VIP ramp on a quiet ankle, he was already planning to find the woman who stopped for him when no one else did. Amara Bennett sat motionless on the cold airport bench, her hands resting in her lap like they no longer belonged to her. All around her, life moved on. Suitcases rolled. Announcements echoed overhead. Babies cried. Gate numbers flickered across digital screens. But inside Amara, everything had gone quiet. She had missed the flight. She had missed her chance. There would be no second interview, no callback, no miracle follow-up email. Just a polite rejection in her inbox and the sinking truth that one moment of kindness had cost her everything. She stared at her phone, thinking about calling her mom. But what could she say? "Hey, Mum, I gave up a six-figure job shot to help a stranger with a sprained ankle. But don't worry, I got a nice thank you out of it." She sighed, wiping her eyes quickly before anyone could notice. And then she heard it. Footsteps. Firm, purposeful. She looked up and froze. Julian. But not the Julian she had helped. This Julian looked like he stepped straight off the cover of Forbes. The dusty jeans and plain t-shirt were gone. In their place, a tailored navy suit, a crisp white shirt, and shoes that looked like they cost more than her rent. And he was walking, no limp, no signs of pain. "Amara," he said, voice calm and steady, "I didn't think you'd still be here." She blinked, unsure if the exhaustion was playing tricks on her. "You're walking?" "Yeah." "Turns out I recover quickly." Amara stood, folding her arms tightly across her chest. A mix of anger, confusion, and sheer embarrassment bubbled inside her. "I missed my flight because of you," she said. "And now you're magically fine, dressed like a Wall Street poster boy, and back here for what? To gloat?" Julian's expression softened. "No. I came back because I wanted to talk to you, to explain." "There's nothing to explain," she said, trying to hold her ground even as her voice cracked. "I helped someone who needed it. That's all. That's exactly why I'm here." She paused. Her heart pounded. Julian reached into his pocket and pulled out a sleek business card, matte black, understated. Just his name in silver letters, the West Air Global logo, and a phone number. Amara took it slowly, eyeing him suspiciously. "You work for West Air?" Julian smiled. "The kind that carried weight. I run it." Her laugh came out flat. "Right." "And I'm Oprah." "I'm serious," he said gently. "Julian Westwood, CEO of West Air Global. We've been building flight infrastructure and maintenance hubs in underserved markets, and today, I wasn't just here to fly. I was here to find someone." Amara's jaw tightened. "What does any of that have to do with me?" "Because I need someone like you. Like me. Someone who doesn't just talk about values in a conference room but lives them even when no one's watching." She stared at him. "You're telling me this whole thing was, what, a test?" Julian shook his head. "No, not a test, a moment. I do this once a year, go out into the world without the suit, without the name, just to see what people are like when they don't think they're being watched. And today, you were the only one who stopped." Amara sat back down, legs suddenly weak. "So what? You're offering me a job?" "Not just a job," Julian said, sitting beside her. "A role. We're launching a global initiative project, Horizon, to bring training and aviation careers to communities that have been ignored for too long. I need someone who can lead the communications, shape the narrative, connect with people." "You don't even know me," she whispered. "I know enough. I know you gave up something big for someone you didn't owe anything to. That's rare. And it's exactly the kind of leadership I believe in. Amara looked down at the card again. Her fingers trembled. I've only worked in mid-sized PR firms. I don't have international experience. I'm not qualified, Julian said gently. That's not what I'm hiring for. Skills can be taught. Heart can't. For a long time, neither of them spoke. Finally, Amara whispered, I missed everything. Julian smiled. Or maybe you found everything. She looked at him. Really looked. Not the suit. Not the title. But the man underneath. The one who remembered what it felt like to be overlooked. Invisible. And somehow, despite the ache in her chest, the loss still lingering, something else began to stir inside her. Hope. Julian stood, adjusting his cufflink. No pressure. Think about it. Call me if you want to talk more. He took a step, then turned back. Oh, and Amara? I'm still waiting on that coffee you promised. And just like that, he was gone. But this time, Amara wasn't left behind. She was left on the edge of something entirely new. Amara Bennett didn't sleep that night. She tried. She turned off her phone, closed the blinds, even played soft jazz like she used to in college. But her mind was too loud. It kept playing the scene over and over. Julian Westwood, standing in that airport, offering her something she hadn't dared to dream about. A seat at the table. Not just a job, not just a salary. A chance to be part of something global, something bigger than herself. At 6:07 a.m., she sat up, stared at the business card again, and whispered, What if this is real? 3 hours later, she called the number. It didn't go to an assistant. Julian answered directly. Ms. Bennett, he said warmly, I was hoping you'd call. 2 weeks later, Amara stepped through the private glass doors of Westair Global headquarters. She expected cold luxury, marble floors, steel walls, polished silence. Instead, she was greeted by color, warmth, and laughter. The receptionist, Renee Carter, a black woman in her early 30s with box braids and electric blue nails, stood and hugged her like they'd known each other for years. Girl, Renee said with a wide grin, you have no idea how happy we are to have you here. I'm not sure I've even signed anything yet, Amara replied, stunned. Doesn't matter. Julian said you're the soul we've been missing. That's good enough. She was handed a badge, a welcome packet, and a cup of vanilla chai, her favorite. No one had even asked. Somehow, they just knew. The elevator ride to the 34th floor felt like ascending into another version of herself. Gone were the rigid cubicles and fake smiles of her past PR jobs. This floor pulsed with ideas. The open concept space buzzed with energy, people of every background, speaking 5 languages at once. Digital screens projecting aviation projects in Nairobi, São Paulo, Hanoi. She wasn't here to write meaningless slogans anymore. She was here to shape the future. That afternoon, Julian gave her the tour personally. No cameras, no suits. Just khakis, sneakers, and a hoodie with the word human stitched over the heart. He showed her the Project Horizon Lava glass-walled room filled with simulation gear, whiteboards, and teenagers from underserved communities being trained in flight mechanics. This is where it starts, he said. Not in boardrooms, in classrooms. They walked past walls covered in sticky notes and Sharpie sketches. Julian pointed to a section labeled Hurt to Heal, a campaign idea born from kids who had grown up in foster care and now wanted to design drones for disaster relief. We don't just invest in aviation, he said. We invest in people who've been told they don't belong in the sky. Amara stood silently, overwhelmed. Why me? She finally asked. You could have chosen a dozen more experienced people. Julian looked at her, serious now, because they wouldn't have stopped. Not that day. And this whole thing, this mission, it's only real if the people leading it understand what it means to be left behind. Her first week was a blur of introductions, brainstorms, and culture shock. At West Air, meetings started with affirmations, not PowerPoints. Staffers cried openly during story reviews and were thanked for it. Executives cleared their own dishes in the cafe and sat with interns at lunch. There were no corner offices, no status games, just vision, just impact. On Friday, Amara led her first team huddle. The room was filled with creators, writers, designers, videographers. Some had worked on Super Bowl ads, others had just gotten their green cards. Amara stood in front of them, hands trembling slightly. "We're not here to sell dreams," she said. "We're here to rebuild reality for the kid in Detroit who thinks flying is only for the rich, for the woman in Nairobi who's never seen someone like her in a pilot seat, for the boy in Cambodia who doesn't even know this world exists. We're here," she continued, "because someone believed in us. So now, we build the runway for someone else." The room fell silent. Then applause. Tears. And something shifted. She wasn't a visitor anymore. She was home. That evening, as she packed up, Julian knocked gently on her office glass. "Got a minute?" he asked. She nodded. They walked up to the rooftop terrace, an open-air space reserved for late-night reflections and sunrise meetings. The city lights of Atlanta twinkled below. "I know this has been a lot," he said quietly. "It's been everything," she replied. Julian looked out at the skyline, hands in his pockets. "People always ask me what success looks like. Is it money? Is it speed? Is it building the next big thing?" He turned to her. "But after all these years, I've learned success is stopping when you don't have to, looking back, reaching down, saying, 'Hey, I see you.'" Amara's eyes welled. "That's what you did," he added. "That's why you're here." She wiped a tear, smiling softly. "And I thought I missed my flight." Julian laughed gently. "No. You just caught the right one." And there, under the night sky, a new journey truly began. It was supposed to be a big day. Amara Bennett had spent 2 weeks preparing for the press rollout of Project Horizon. She had personally overseen the campaign messaging, organized the partner interviews, and approved every asset. This was her first major deliverable as Director of Global Communications, and she was determined to prove she belonged. But 30 minutes before the live announcement, something went wrong. Horribly wrong. A leaked early version of the press release one that still included unverified statistics and a poorly worded quote was published by a major tech site. Within minutes, critics pounced. Screenshots spread. Headlines twisted her language. Pundits on LinkedIn and X were already calling it another tone-deaf diversity play. Amara stood frozen in the media command center, staring at the massive screen. Her lungs forgot how to breathe. "Who released it?" she asked, voice brittle. A young assistant named Tyler raised his hand, panic in his eyes. I thought it was final. It was in the green folder." Amara closed her eyes. That folder had been color-coded weeks ago. Green meant publish, yellow meant pending, red meant internal use only. Except someone had accidentally moved the wrong version to green. And now, the company's most inclusive campaign was being torn apart online. The room fell silent. Eyes turned to Amara. "Should we cancel the event?" someone asked. "Or delay it?" another chimed in. She felt the walls closing in. Her mind raced with every possible consequence. Julian's trust. The board's doubts. The communities they were trying to serve. She was supposed to protect the message, and now it was unraveling. But before she could say a word, the door opened. Julian Westwood walked in. No one spoke. No one breathed. He scanned the room, looked at the screen, then looked at Amara. "Can I speak to you?" he said calmly. She followed him into the adjacent office, expecting disappointment, maybe even termination. He closed the door, turned to her and said, "Talk to me." Her lips trembled. It was my fault. I didn't double-check the final export folder. I trusted the process. I should have verified it myself. Julian sat on the edge of the desk, folding his arms not in anger, but in thought. You know what most people do when they mess up? He asked. She stayed quiet. They blame the intern. They disappear. They throw someone else under the bus. He leaned forward. You didn't do that. Because it was mine to own, she whispered. Julian nodded. Then own it out loud in the next 20 minutes. Amara blinked. You want me to go through with the launch? I want you to show them what leadership looks like. But the media, let them talk. You walk out there, take the mic, and you explain what happened. No PR polish, just the truth. Amara stared at him, her chest burning. You'd still trust me to do that? After what I caused? You didn't cause a scandal, he said. You caused a conversation. Now finish it. 15 minutes later, Amara stood before a room of journalists, investors, and community leaders. Cameras rolled, screens flashed. She didn't open with a slogan. She didn't thank the press. She said, I made a mistake. A hush fell over the room. An internal draft of our Project Horizon statement was mistakenly released this morning. It included language that didn't reflect our final intent or the voices of the people this project serves. That is on me. No one else, just me. She looked up. And if there's one thing I've learned since joining West Air Global, it's that leadership is not about being perfect. It's about being accountable. The room remained still. Some raised eyebrows, some typed faster. But a few nodded. So let me be accountable, not with spin, with action. Today you're not getting a corporate apology. You're getting a commitment that we will do better, listen more, and never stop learning. She paused. Now let's talk about what this project really is and who it's for. By the end of the hour, something strange had happened. The tide shifted. Journalists started quoting her, not the leak. Community leaders approached her afterward, thanking her for her honesty. One partner whispered, "That's the first time I've heard a corporate exec admit they got it wrong without hiding behind legal." Back upstairs, Amara returned to her desk, ready for whatever consequences would follow. But an email awaited her. Subject, you stood taller today. JW. She smiled, not because she was safe, but because she was seen. That night, Amara sat alone on the rooftop terrace again. The city below shimmered. Her mind was quiet, but her heart was full. Julian joined her after a while, handing her a mug of herbal tea. "For your voice," he said with a smirk. "Is it still mine?" she joked, rubbing her throat. He sat beside her. "You know what I saw today? A disaster?" "No," he said. "A leader." She looked at him. "I've failed up before, but today it felt different." "Like I failed forward." Julian nodded slowly. "That's the only way we grow." She sipped the tea, then turned toward him. "Why didn't you yell? Or replace me, or, I don't know, call PR crisis avengers?" He smiled. "Because I don't need perfection in this company. I need people who rise when they fall." A breeze swept over the terrace. Amara looked out across the city, her fingers tightening around the warm ceramic cup. "Then I hope I get to keep rising." "You will," Julian said. "You already are." 2 months into her new role, Amara Bennett had found her rhythm. She no longer flinched when someone called her director. She knew which elevator didn't rattle. She could recite West Air's core initiatives in her sleep and had once during a 3 a.m. brainstorm. But nothing prepared her for the moment Julian walked into her office and said, very casually, "My mother would like to meet you." Amara blinked. "Meet me?" "Yes." "As in, your mother?" "That's the one." She sat up straighter. "Why?" Julian gave a little smile, almost boyish. "Because she's curious. And because, apparently, I haven't shut up about you for weeks. Amara stared. You told her about me? Only the good parts, he teased. Mostly how you saved our entire communications rollout, and that you're the first person to ever argue with me over lunch and win. That wasn't an argument, she murmured. That was me correcting your historical misquote about Shirley Chisholm. Same thing. That Sunday, Amara found herself standing in front of a wrought iron gate in Buckhead, Atlanta's wealthiest neighborhood. She wore a navy wrap dress and low heels, elegant but safe. Her curls were freshly styled, her nails trimmed. Her heart pounding like a drum. The gate buzzed open, and a sleek white Tesla eased down the path to greet her. Julian stepped out, dressed in a soft linen shirt and chinos. Less CEO, more Sunday brunch. Ready? He asked. Nope, she whispered. Perfect. That means you'll be brilliant. The Westwood estate was as she imagined, sprawling, elegant but tasteful, the kind of place that whispered wealth instead of shouting it. Climbing roses framed the veranda. A grand oak shaded the front lawn. Somewhere in the distance, wind chimes sang in the breeze. Julian opened the door, and there she was, Vivian Westwood. Impeccably dressed in a cream blouse and slacks, silver hair in soft waves, pearls around her neck. She didn't stand to greet Amara. She rose with the poise of a former ballet instructor and the precision of a woman who'd hosted senators. Ms. Bennett, she said, extending a hand. Or may I call you Amara? Amara is fine, she replied, smiling. Good. Julian's been singing your praises, and I needed to see the woman behind the miracle. Amara laughed nervously. I'm not sure about miracle, but thank you. Vivian gestured toward a sunlit sitting room. Come, tea or champagne? Tea's perfect. The next 30 minutes were intense. Vivian asked about Amara's childhood. Her education, her mother, her first job. Her worst job, her views on global outreach, her opinion on ethical brand storytelling. And subtly, whether she'd ever dated anyone from old money, Amara held her own. She didn't overstep, didn't shrink. She answered with warmth, humor, and clarity. At one point, when Vivian said, "And you've never considered law school?" Amara responded, "My mom said I argued like a lawyer but felt like a poet, so I stayed in communications." Vivian smiled. A poet with power, that's rare. Julian had remained quiet mostly, just watching. His eyes soft. After lunch, Vivian surprised them both. Amara, may I show you something? She led Amara into a small gallery near the back of the house. The walls were lined with framed photographs, black pioneers in aviation, journalism, politics. Some were familiar, others deeply personal. These are the people I wanted my son to learn from, Vivian said. We built our name in business, but we stand on the shoulders of giants. She pointed to a faded photo of a young black woman in a pilot's uniform. That's my aunt. First black woman to fly medevac in the Korean War. She died saving 3 soldiers. The military didn't even record her name properly. Amara's throat tightened. I never knew, she whispered. Most people don't, Vivian said. That's why storytelling matters. That's why people like you matter. They stood in silence. Then Vivian turned to her. You're not what I expected, Amara. That's usually the first sentence before a rejection, she joked softly. Vivian chuckled. Not this time. You're better than I expected. Later, as Julian drove her home, Amara sat quietly, staring out the window. You okay? He asked. She nodded slowly. I think your mom likes me. She respects you, Julian corrected. That's bigger. Why did you really want me to meet her? He glanced over. Because the last woman I brought home tried to impress her with stock tips and name-dropped 3 ambassadors. You didn't do that. Should I have? No. You brought yourself. That's enough. She smiled faintly. She's intimidating. She's brilliant. And she's right. You're better than I expected too. They stopped at a red light. Julian looked at her, unguarded. This, us. Is it too complicated? Amara looked back. Complicated things tend to matter more. The light turned green. They drove on. Not fast, not rushed, just forward. It was the most anticipated night of the year for West Air Global, the Horizon Future Gala, an invitation-only event, black tie, champagne fountains, silent auctions, executives, politicians, and celebrities gathered under the soaring glass dome of Atlanta's Westview Conservatory to celebrate the expansion of Project Horizon into 6 new countries. Everyone who was anyone in aviation, philanthropy, and tech would be there, except Amara Bennett. She hadn't been invited. Not out of malice, it just never came up. The guest list was finalized by the events team months earlier, before she joined. And while she was integral to the project's success, she assumed she'd be working behind the scenes, managing press kits and handling remote interviews. So she planned to spend the night at home, chamomile tea, a book, and the satisfaction of knowing her work was being celebrated. Until Julian called her at 5:42 p.m. "Where are you?" "At home," she said, surprised. "Why?" "You're supposed to be here." "I didn't get an invitation." "You didn't need one. You're the reason this gala exists." "Julian, I don't have a dress. There's one waiting in your size." "Car service is downstairs." 30 minutes later, Amara stepped out of a sleek black town car, heart pounding. She wore a deep emerald gown, off-shoulder, simple but stunning. Her hair was swept into soft curls, and for the first time in a long time, she didn't feel like someone pretending to belong. She belonged. At the entrance, the valet did a double take. He wasn't the only one. Inside the gala, heads turned as she walked in. "Is that her?" "That's the woman from the rollout. She's the new voice behind Horizon." She was halfway to the main hall when she locked eyes with Julian across the room. He was in a classic black tux, no tie, hands in his pockets, cool and collected as always. But when he saw her, his expression changed. Something unspoken passed between them. He walked toward her. "I'm glad you came," he said quietly. "You didn't give me much of a choice," she teased. "You made the choice the day you stayed and took responsibility." He offered his arm. "Walk with me." They strolled past floating light installations and interactive displays showing Horizon's reach from STEM labs in Nairobi to drone training in the Mississippi Delta. Julian paused in front of a wall labeled "Faces of the Future." Photos of young students filled the space, smiling, dreaming, reaching. "This is what they see when they see West Air," he said. "Not me, not the jets. Them. Because of you." Amara swallowed hard. "You give me too much credit." "No. I give you just enough." Later that evening, during the main presentation, the MC took the stage. "Tonight, we honor a leader who wasn't hired with a title. She earned it with action. With grace, with courage, and with the kind of voice that makes us all listen." Amara froze. "Please welcome Amara Bennett." The spotlight hit her like a wave. Applause erupted. She stood. Slowly, her legs shook beneath the gown, but she walked forward. Every step was a memory. Her first day at West Air, the leaked draft, Julian's rooftop speech, Vivian's gallery of unsung heroes. She reached the podium, took a breath, and began. "I didn't come from this world. I wasn't born into rooms like this, but I was raised by a woman who taught me one thing: leave people better than you found them. And if you can't, don't touch them at all." Laughter. Warm, knowing. When I joined West Air, I thought I was being given a job, but what I was really being handed was responsibility. To tell stories that matter. To build bridges no one sees. And to make sure that when a young girl in Detroit or Lagos or Jakarta looks at the sky, she knows it's not off limits. The crowd leaned in. We don't just train pilots here. We train possibilities. Applause. Standing ovation. Amara blinked back tears. She looked toward Julian. He didn't clap the hardest. He just nodded with pride. And something else. Something deeper. After the speech, people surrounded her, shaking hands, thanking her, asking questions. But she found a quiet moment on the terrace again, heels off, glass of water in hand. Julian joined her. How do you feel? He asked. Exposed, she said, but proud. He leaned against the railing. You made this night unforgettable. You did that. No, Julian said. I built the plane. You made it fly. They stood in silence for a moment. Then Julian added, My mother texted me. Oh? She said, She's not just a voice. She's a movement. Amara smiled softly. That's the nicest thing she's said about anyone since Michelle Obama. High praise. Earned. As the night wound down, Amara looked out at the city skyline, her city, her story, and somewhere in the distance, her future. She didn't know exactly where it was going, but for the first time, she wasn't afraid to rise. 3 days after the Horizon Gala, Amara Bennett sat in the West Air Global Conference Room, heart steady, pen in hand. She was prepping for what she thought would be a standard interview with Aeroscope magazine, a well-regarded publication known for profiling rising voices in aviation. It was Julian's idea to spotlight her work. You're the future of the brand, he'd said. They need to see that. She agreed. But 10 minutes into the interview, something shifted. The journalist, a middle-aged man with glasses and an impeccable voice recorder, leaned forward and asked, Let's talk about your time at Unity PR in DC. You left suddenly, didn't you? Amara froze. No one at West Air had ever brought it up, not even Julian. Yes, she said slowly. I left after 8 months. Why? She hesitated. Not because she didn't remember, but because she remembered too well. It was 3 years ago. Unity PR had been her dream firm, slick, progressive, fast-paced. She'd moved to DC. On a bus with 2 suitcases and boundless ambition. By month 3, she noticed something off. Her work was frequently presented in meetings, without her being invited. Her ideas were praised but not credited. She once watched her manager pitch a campaign she'd written from scratch, word for word. When she brought it up, she was called aggressive. When she asked for promotion, she was told she lacked polish. And when she finally stood up during an all-hands meeting and asked why no women of color were in leadership, a memo went out the next day announcing a restructuring. Her role was dissolved 2 weeks later. No scandal, no lawsuit, just silence. She left with nothing but a locked LinkedIn account and a resume that felt radioactive. Back in the conference room, the journalist waited. Why did you leave? Amara looked up and said clearly, Because I spoke up, and they didn't want to hear it. The man blinked. Can you elaborate? She folded her hands. At Unity, I learned how easy it is for powerful places to use diversity as a decoration. But when it threatens comfort, they choose silence. And now? Now I work at a place that lets me use my voice, not just decorate the room. There was a pause. The journalist sat back. That's bold. It's honest. Later that afternoon, Amara returned to her office. She was nervous. Had she said too much? Had she put Julian and the company in a difficult position? Just then, there was a knock. Julian stepped in. Hey, how was the interview? Fine, she lied. He gave her that look, the one that meant don't pretend with me. They brought up Unity, she admitted. Julian nodded slowly. And? I told the truth. Good. Even if it reflects badly? Amara, he said gently, if telling the truth reflects badly, then we're in the wrong business. She breathed out. You're not mad? No, he said, I'm proud. I've made more mistakes than I care to admit. But the biggest one was thinking silence protects a reputation. It doesn't. It just hides the rot. He sat down across from her. I hired you because you were smart. I kept you because you were brave. That night, the interview went live. The headline read, "From Silence to Spotlight, How Amara Bennett Became the Voice Aviation Needed." It went viral within hours, not because of glitz or gossip, but because finally someone had said what so many felt. Comments poured in. "This is the most honest thing I've read in ages. She's saying what we've all whispered behind closed doors. I want my daughters to read this." Unity PR, ironically, issued a bland statement about ongoing commitments to diversity. But no one was listening to them. They were listening to her. The next morning, Amara arrived at the office to find a bouquet of wildflowers on her desk. No note, no sender, just one stem tucked slightly out of place, with a tag that read, "Keep speaking. We're listening." Later that day, Julian passed her in the hallway. He didn't stop. Didn't say a word, just touched his heart with 2 fingers as he walked by. She smiled. That evening, Amara walked past her old journal, the one she'd nearly thrown away after Unity. She opened it, page after page of doubt, anger, dreams, scribbled prayers. But on the last page, she had once written, "One day, my silence will end, and when it does, I hope someone hears me." Now she knew. They had. Amara Bennett had never been to Europe, not even in her dreams. Growing up, vacation meant her mother's rusted Honda Civic, a picnic basket, and gospel music on the radio. Paris had always felt like a backdrop for someone else's life, a place for women who wore silk scarves and never worried about overdue rent. So when Julian walked into her office one Monday morning and said, "Pack a bag, you're coming to Paris," she blinked. "Wait, what?" "We're launching Horizon's EMEA partnership, and they want the communications director present." "I've only been director for 3 months. And already changing the game. They asked for you by name." 3 days later, Amara found herself staring out the window of a private jet. Below, the clouds moved like waves. Beside her, Julian read quietly, his suit jacket slung over his seat, tie loosened. He looked different. Less like a CEO. More like someone who slept in late and read poetry. "What are you thinking?" he asked. She smiled. "That my mother wouldn't believe this. Me, 35,000 feet in the air, flying first class with a billionaire to Paris. She'd be proud. She'd be suspicious." He laughed. "Good mothers are." Paris was a blur of lights, meetings, and magic. The West Air event was hosted at a 19th-century glass pavilion in the Jardin des Plantes. Amara spoke on a panel with African tech innovators. She posed for photos with Senegalese pilots in training. She even gave a speech in French thanking Horizon's European partners. It was shaky, but heartfelt. Julian stood beside her the whole time. Not as a savior, but as a supporter. He watched her lead, listened when she spoke, introduced her not as my colleague, but as the voice of what comes next. And on their last night in the city, he said, "There's one place I need to take you before we leave." It was midnight when they reached the Pont Alexandre III, the most ornate bridge in Paris. Gold statues shimmered under the streetlights. The Seine whispered below. The Eiffel Tower sparkled in the distance, like it knew a secret. They stood in silence for a while. Then Julian said, "You once told me you didn't belong in rooms like this." "I did." "Do you still believe that?" Amara exhaled. "Less now." "Good. Because you don't just belong in the room, Amara. You change the room." She turned to look at him. Really look. And for the first time since they met, she saw him not as her boss, or the man who gave her a chance, but as something else. A man with his own fears. A man who'd built a kingdom but was still learning how to share it. a man who, at this moment, was completely unguarded. "Julian, I brought you here because I wanted you to see the city the way I first saw it." "How's that?" "Alone." She blinked. "You were alone in Paris?" "The first year I took over West Air, I came here to secure our first European deal. I walked this bridge by myself after the meeting. No team. No champagne. Just this view, and the weight of everything on my shoulders. And now," he took a step closer. "Now, I'm not alone." There was silence. Not awkward, not uncertain, just full. Then he said, "You don't owe me anything. Not for the job, not for the plane. Not even this view. But if you feel what I feel..." Amara felt her pulse in her throat. "What do you feel?" she asked. Julian didn't answer with words. He reached into his coat pocket, pulled out a small velvet pouch. Amara froze. "No," he laughed, catching her expression. "It's not a ring." "Oh, okay." "Good, I mean, not that I would have said. Open it." Inside was a vintage compass, worn, but still gleaming. Engraved on the back were 5 words. "You were always the North." Amara looked up, eyes stinging. "Julian, I don't know where this is going," he said softly. "But if you're willing to walk with me at your pace, not mine, I'd like to find out." She closed her hand around the compass. Then her other hand closed around his. They didn't kiss. Not that night. It wasn't about sparks or fairy tales. It was about 2 people flawed, fearless, and finally seen. Together. Facing the wind on a bridge in Paris. And for Amara, who once stood outside every door believing she didn't deserve to knock, this was the moment she realized. She was the door. The sun hadn't even fully risen when Amara's phone buzzed. It was a text from her mother. "I'm on the 8:10 a.m. from Dallas. Please don't fuss." Amara blinked at the screen. Her hands trembled. She hadn't seen her mother, Elaine Bennett, in over a year. Not since before West Air. Before Julian. Before Project Horizon. Back when Amara was barely making rent and too ashamed to go home for Christmas. And now suddenly, her mother was on her way. By 9:30 a.m., Amara was pacing the arrivals terminal at Hartsfield-Jackson, trying not to cry. What would her mother think? Would she approve of her new apartment, the new clothes? Would she be proud of how far Amara had come? Or suspicious of how fast it had all happened? She spotted Elaine through the crowd, still tall and strong in her church flats, pulling a floral roller bag that had seen too many Greyhound trips. Her eyes lit up when they locked onto Amara. "Baby girl," she said softly. Amara ran into her arms. No words. Just warmth, familiar, fierce. "You look tired," Elaine said, brushing hair from her daughter's cheek. "But expensive." They both laughed. Back at Amara's apartment, Elaine moved slowly through the room, touching the sleek marble counter, lifting a frame off the bookshelf, pausing by a photo of Amara standing next to Julian at the Horizon Gala. "That him?" "Yes," Amara said. "That's Julian." Elaine gave a small nod. "He's handsome." "But you're the one glowing." "Mama, don't explain. I see it in your eyes. You've worked for this." "I'm just trying to catch up." Amara felt the knot in her chest start to loosen. They spent the day together. A private tour of West Air's new training facility. Lunch with the Horizon Communications team. Elaine asked questions, sharp ones, and smiled at the interns like they were her grandkids. Everywhere they went, people treated Amara with respect. Not polite respect, earned respect. Elaine noticed. "You're not just surviving here," she said. "You're leading." That evening, Amara brought her mother to the Elmore Room, the upscale restaurant where Julian had made her feel seen for the first time. Julian was already waiting. He stood as they approached, buttoning his jacket with instinctive grace. "Mrs. Bennett," he said, extending a hand. "It's an honor." Elaine took it with a raised brow. "I hear you're the man who gave my daughter a chance." No, ma'am. She took the chance herself. I just made space. Elaine smiled. Just a little. Smart answer. Dinner passed in waves, jokes, stories, glances exchanged. Julian was gracious but not performative. He listened to Elaine talk about raising Amara on a nurse's salary, about long nights working double shifts while her daughter taught herself how to code on a borrowed laptop. She always had her head in two places, Elaine said, one in the clouds, the other in a book. And now, Julian said, she's teaching the clouds to listen. That made Elaine pause. Then she laughed. After dessert, Julian excused himself for a call. Elaine leaned across the table. He's a good man. Amara blinked. You think so? I'm not easy to impress, Elaine said. You know that. But I don't judge a man by his money or manners. I judge him by how he looks at my daughter. She touched Amara's hand. He looks at you like you're the reason he built all this in the first place. Tears welled in Amara's eyes. Mama, I was so scared to show you this part of my life. I thought you'd say I'd changed. You have changed. Is that bad? Elaine shook her head. Baby, you didn't change. You grew, and that's all I ever wanted. That night, they sat on the balcony of Amara's apartment, watching the Atlanta skyline shimmer. Elaine pulled a worn envelope from her purse. Your aunt found this in some old boxes. You wrote it in high school. Said you wanted to open it when you made it. Amara opened the letter slowly. Her 17-year-old handwriting stared back at her. Dear future me, I hope you never give up your voice. I hope you do something bigger than survive. And I hope you still dance to old gospel songs on Sunday mornings. Amara laughed, tears spilling. I forgot I even wrote this. You didn't forget, Elaine said. You just didn't know how close you were. As the city buzzed below, Amara leaned against her mother's shoulder. Not as a child. Not as a woman trying to prove herself, but as a daughter finally ready to rest. For the first time in years, she felt whole. Not because of Paris, not because of Julian, not even because of West Air. But because the woman who built her dreams from nothing just looked her in the eye and said, You are more than I ever prayed for. And Amara believed it. 6 months later, the world knew Amara Bennett. Not because of some scandal, not because of a viral soundbite or a high-profile romance, but because she'd done the work. West Air Global's Project Horizon had grown beyond anyone's expectations, training over 1,000 young people across underserved communities in 6 countries. Aviation schools in Kenya and Mississippi bore her name on scholarship plaques. Her voice had been featured on Time, Forbes, and even Good Morning America. But that wasn't what changed everything. It was one unexpected day. Julian had been pacing for hours in the executive wing. The board was meeting privately to vote on something that could alter the soul of West Air, a proposed acquisition by HelixJet, a firm known for gutting community initiatives and cutting DEI programs to boost quarterly profits. Julian was against it, so was Amara, but the decision wasn't theirs to make. At exactly 3 p.m., the doors opened. The chair of the board stepped out, face unreadable. Mr. Westwood, Ms. Bennett, can you join us? Amara reached for Julian's hand as they walked in. The room was silent. Then came the words neither expected. The board has declined the HelixJet offer. Amara exhaled, but the chairman wasn't finished. And we voted unanimously to restructure executive leadership with a new shared vision. Julian raised an eyebrow. Meaning? The chairman looked directly at Amara. You're the new Chief Impact Officer of West Air Global, starting immediately. The room blurred. Amara's ears rang. She glanced at Julian, who smiled, nodded, and whispered, It's yours. That evening, she stood on the rooftop of the West Air campus as the city lights shimmered below. The wind danced in her curls. Julian joined her, 2 glasses in hand. Champagne? Sparkling cider, you know me. They clinked. You always saw this coming, didn't you? she asked. Not exactly. Then why me? Julian looked at her with a warmth that made the stars themselves blink slower. Because the day I met you, you helped a stranger in pain. You gave up your own flight to do it. That's not strategy. That's heart. And heart builds legacies. And what about yours? She asked softly. I thought West Air was my legacy. It's not? No, he said. You are. Later that week, Amara walked into a small church in Austin. She took a seat in the back pew and watched as 10 students from the original Horizon pilot program crossed the stage in caps and gowns. One by one, they named their hometowns Newark, Compton, Lagos, and their next steps: NASA internships, commercial pilot training, engineering schools. The final student paused. My name is Elijah. I grew up in a foster home, and next month I start flight school because of a woman named Amara Bennett. She taught me that no one's background is too broken to fly. The room erupted. Amara wept. Not quietly, not apologetically, just openly, because this was the moment. This was why. Back home, a package waited at her door. No sender. Just a simple card. Open when you forget how far you've come. Inside was a photograph. Her, in her old airport uniform, helping a limping man walk across the terminal floor. Someone had caught it on camera. Someone had remembered. On the back, one more line. That woman, she still lives in you. Amara closed her eyes and smiled. 1 year later, Julian asked her to marry him. Not with a grand gesture, not on a yacht or stage or in front of cameras, but in the training hangar, surrounded by students she'd mentored, with grease on her hands and joy in her eyes. She said yes, not because he made her powerful, but because he'd never been threatened by her power. Amara Bennett never set out to change the world. She just refused to walk past someone who needed help. And from that one act born not of ambition, but compassion, came a future that rewrote what leadership could look like. Not loud, not perfect, just human. And wholly hers. Life doesn't always reward the loudest voice, but it honors the quiet courage to do what's right. Amara Bennett wasn't trying to be a hero. She was just helping a stranger at the airport. But that small act of kindness, choosing compassion over convenience, became the spark that changed her life forever. For older Americans who've spent decades navigating a world that doesn't always see gentleness as strength, this story is a quiet reminder. Integrity still matters. You don't need a platform or power to create impact. You just need to show up with heart. Whether it's standing up for your values in a corporate boardroom or offering a hand when no one else will, the ripple effect is real. And sometimes the reward isn't a spotlight, but a life you're proud of. As we age, legacy becomes more than money or title. It becomes the lives we touch. Like Amara, your most defining moment may not be planned. It may come on an ordinary day, so stay kind, stay ready. And believe the right heart can change the course of everything.